Hi. First of all, thanks to Marta and Andreas and the guys from Leap for having us here tonight. As Marta mentioned earlier, my wife Helen and me, we got to Berlin yesterday in the morning and we're a little jet lagged, so if there's any gaps in my speech, please apologize that. After seeing all these amazing creative things tonight from um, Mark, no, sorry, I forgot the name. Jesus, see, that's the jet lag. I'm just gonna blame it on jet lag. Um, Lucas, and Helen. I wanna show you guys a project that I don't know. It's I think more the reality of the business we work in. And I also have to ask, who's working with After Effects or Cinema 4D here in this room? Okay, that's not too many hands. I was hoping for more hands because for the rest of you, I guess it's going to be really boring. um, no, but seriously, we're working in the commercial industry. We have all these amazing inspirations, and we see on Motionographer every day amazing projects that studios put out. But the reality is that studios have to survive, and studios have to do work that might not be as creatively challenging. But it's necessary to earn money, and so yeah, I want to show you a job that was basically 2 weeks long and lasted over an entire year. I actually finished working on it exactly 3 weeks ago because it just dragged on so long. It was an insane job, and it was one of the reasons why I left New York. Not to sound, depressing or anything. But first, let me introduce myself. So my name is Conrad. I'm originally from Leipzig in East Germany. I studied in Weimar, got a BA in media design, and in 2007 I did an internship at FAUX in New York. And after that internship, I went back home, finished my studies, and then moved to New York in 2008. Worked there as an animator and compositor. And ended working as a, oops, sorry, this way. Ended working as a senior animator and lead, and basically I was a jack of all trades. So I wasn't a specialist in Maya or anything. I just knew how a project was needed to be done from the beginning to the end. So I kind of filled holes everywhere. If a job went down, I had to jump in and fix it. And in the last year of my work there, I kind of managed jobs that had tons of deliverables that were really heavy in terms of production planning. So I was kind of in between the producers and the creative side. Yeah, and that's the result of that is in my reel. Some people of you might know my reel from 5 years ago. I haven't had time to do a new one ever since that. So I just put something together. I didn't even make it to animate an intro and outro, but maybe it gives you a little oversight of what I worked on. I have many great ideas for a new reel, but I didn't have any time to work on it. So this must hold up for now, and then hopefully this summer I can get to work on my website and build a new proper one. But maybe you like it. That's that intro that wasn't animated yet. This was 5 years of work compressed into 1 minute. Yeah, so I want to also show you the place where all this stuff was made that you just saw at a company called Buck in New York. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not. It's basically a production studio for motion graphics, 3D work, live action, and design. And they're based in New York and Los Angeles, and I worked in the New York office. When I started there 6 years ago, there was exactly 5 people working at the office, including me. And when I left 2 weeks ago, it was almost 30 people. And we sometimes maxed out to 45 people at the height, including freelancers. Buck has an amazing work atmosphere. If you guys ever think about doing an internship in the States, I can highly recommend going there. It's really nice. People are really welcoming. The creative energy there is amazing. There's people from all around the world working there, from Europe, South America, New Zealand, Australia, and Asia. And I had wonderful 5 years there, or 6 years actually. And I want to show you why that is with a day at Buck that, you know, would usually, or like I want to show you a usual day at Buck in photos. So you would take the elevator, and the first person you see is Megan, our office manager. She's a really great girl. She takes care of mostly everything, gets us food and coffee and everything we need. These are some guys working there. Kevin, our producer, Bryce, our 3D lead, Orion, our boss, and Ben on the right is one of our art directors. The office is rather long. It's exactly 1 block long in the heart of Soho. And for some reason, we started getting these little skateboards. So here you see Iker rolling around on a skateboard, and he's also hiding from the producers that are sitting in one of those rooms behind him with the windows. So he's just, yeah, I think he came late to work or something. Yeah, we obviously work a lot, and this is Ben acting as a hovering art director. We do cell animation and all sorts of stuff. Our creatives are always trying to... It's actually weird that I'm still speaking as if I've worked there, even though I quit. So excuse me for that, but I don't know, it just feels so fresh that I have to change my mindset. Anyway, so they're doing a lot of cell animation and trying out new techniques like claymation, stop motion, whatever you want. And then for lunch, we would all step out for dinner. For example, with Gareth, one of our art directors here. When we're back from lunch, we would shoot something in our little studio that we have there. Actually, that table that all the stuff is on is a ping pong table that can be transformed into a shooting thing. And I wasn't able to play ping pong for the past half year because they were constantly shooting something there, which made me really upset. Yeah, most of the designers work on Cintiqs and they really love them. As soon as somebody is being called a designer, then they want to claim their Cintiq to work on it. Here you see that's basically our main working area. Ben is on an interesting phone call with a client right now, arguing for some creative challenges. Then we would discuss these things with our producers in their office. Any changes, then we would work a bit more. All act as hovering art directors over one machine. Everybody always wants to put a finger in and be creative. Then in the afternoon, we might all step out to coffee at our local coffee shop Saturdays, which is also a surf shop. It's a pretty cool place where you can sit in the back and smoke cigarettes, drink iced coffee, and talk about work. And if it would be a Friday, we would stop by on the liquor store on the way back, buy some booze with company money to make everyone happy in the evening. As soon as people hear that, they grab one of those skateboards, run to the kitchen, where we hid most of the booze in the ginormous fridge that is so very American. I've never seen a fridge that big. And then we would all have a good time, or maybe celebrate someone's birthday. This picture actually was taken last week, where it was the birthday of 3 people. So don't worry, we're not drinking all the time. Well, it might look like that because it's all drinks there. So we would maybe play a game while we're waiting for client comments at night. And then as the day ends, people slowly start winding out and check their cell phones. And then we have our friend Seth, who is our colorist, and he's pretty much there all the time, which is sad, but he makes amazing work. And yeah, and then as the day ends, somebody has to turn the light off, which was usually me as a German. I was kind of in charge of taking care of recycling, filling the Brita. I even changed light bulbs there because nobody seems to care about it. Anyway, so yeah, this is more or less a normal day at Buck. And then, yeah, maybe I would be the last one to leave and I just turn the lights off. So the project I want to talk about doesn't fit into a day like this at all. It's neither a typical Buck project. Whoever of you is familiar with the work we do, it's usually pretty crazy, pretty colorful, and pretty amazing stuff. However, as a production company, we need to pay the rent, we need to pay the artists that we hire, we need to basically finance creative jobs. And in order to do that, we have to take on jobs that are maybe not as creatively challenging. Let me put it that way. However, as I said, my role as a kind of generalist that is not a Maya expert, I grew into this role of leading jobs like this that were, you know, that didn't have a strong creative, but still need to be done, where a lot of afterwork would happen, where we would need to build it in a way that is really smart and time efficient, and yeah, would help to fix it from the beginning to the end. So I introduced to you Verizon. Good ideas. The McGarry Bowen agency came to us to pitch on this job, which had a pretty good budget, but only very short time. And once in a while, our producers decide to not take on these jobs. However, with this one, they said, okay, we have to take this. The budget is just too good. And basically, what it is, or what it is about, is Verizon Wireless. It's a cell phone provider, kind of like T-Mobile or O2 here, and they're doing a cooperation with a cable provider. So basically, they're offering a combo deal of some sorts, and it's a really great thing, and people should know about it all over America. Yeah, so let me show you what that finished spot looks like. This is one of the many finals we delivered over the last year, starting in February 2012.
Portland, here's big news from Verizon Wireless and Xfinity from Comcast. Now get the Xfinity Triple Play and Verizon Wireless together. Call 855-704-7400 to sign up and get a free smartphone. Choose one of our hottest phones. Verizon Wireless and Xfinity. TV, home phone, internet, and wireless together.
Great, right? What a beautiful, no, please, no. So I just want to go through how we did this job, because I think we figured out some ways that in hindsight made whatever happened after the final delivery of the first spot that you just saw so much easier. We obviously started with the pitch. The clients wanted to see a literal connection between the two companies that that product they're selling. Then also we had to figure out a way to produce this spot in a very short amount of time. And we had to make it as versatile as possible, so basically that we can change the colors and the logos and the supers and the legal as quickly as possible. So the client or the agency provided us with this sheet, with this PDF that they kept updating pretty much every day throughout the course of the project. And our designers in New York started making four concepts, or 4 design frames basically, that we sent out. And this is the first one that Ben made. I think Kanisha made this one. As you can see, like the connection is happening there, and they want to incorporate the type in the 3D world. And then this one is kind of silhouette-y style with some 3D cell shading elements. And this was, as you might guess, the winning concept. So this one actually shows the connection pretty well because everything in the spot is based on lines, which to me in hindsight doesn't make much sense because the company that sells the product is called Verizon Wireless. And I brought that up in a phone call with the agency and it was just, just raising a flag, basically saying, well, you guys are called Verizon Wireless. Why do you want to have an entire spot made of wires? But they just like the style. And the design was based on a job that I worked on about a year before this whole thing happened, with just one additional art director, and it was for DuPont. That was basically the same idea, and it looks a bit like this. So this is all spline animation in cinema. And the art director Thomas, who was working on this, basically asked me when he showed me his style frame, so can we do this in 2 weeks? And I'm like, well, I worked on this alone in 3 weeks, so with a big team, I think we can do it. It's getting more emotional. It's an American company. They always have this amazing music with it. Very American. I love this. This is just so, still gives me shivers. I think they showed that on some trade fair or something. So anyway, so this spot was basically the benchmark of what we're gonna do, and thank you. So this was the benchmark, but notice that there was only one spline, one line going through the entire spot. For the Verizon one, we had basically everything built out of splines, and also incorporating all these shaders and things on the TV and all the type that got more and more over time. But yeah, this was basically where we started off, even though these changed a lot throughout time. You know how there's usually a lock date where you have to lock design? That never happened here. Like we had that date, but the clients just never locked it. They kept changing the thing over and over again. And also, in order to deliver an HD and an SD project, all this type that you see here had to fit into the center cut area. So we would work in 1080p, but everything has to also fit into SD, which was in the end very challenging. You might remember from when I showed you the spot first, all this type kind of clutters up the foreground. Well, yeah, that's what happened, and they added more and more over time. So we worked out a calendar, and another great thing happened here. So you see basically most of the things are overlapping. Like design is overlapping with modeling, which is a good thing. But then modeling overlapping with animation is kind of tricky. Animation overlapping with compositing is even worse. Which is kind of, yeah, so we sat down and figured out a way to tackle the job. We built a team of 9 people in total, including a producer, 1 intern, a couple of freelancers, and an art director. And we're mostly animators, 3D generalists. Sorry. And yeah, tried to figure this out. And as you can see, there's like the animation work in progress things happening. I'm going to show you all these so you can see where we started and where we ended. And we decided, okay, so we have to start with design, and parallel to that, we can do an animatic in Cinema 4D, split the whole thing into shots so we can basically give it to other freelancers or distribute the whole spot to different people that then would model Parallel to that, we would shoot the people that are in the spot, live action, roto them, or send out this material to a roto company in LA. Parallel to that, we would build the edit in After Effects, do the modeling and shading in After Effects also, and then we have to face timing changes, super indigo changes, design changes, and to conform in the very end. So all these things had to pretty much happen at the same time. So the biggest challenge when we looked at it was, okay, so first of all, we need to do all these lines. We decided, okay, we can do them Cinema 4D, because 3D stroke in After Effects was not an option. We used tracers for that, and all sorts of techniques to build these models as quickly as possible. There's actually a great tool called Spline Animator. I don't know, it's a little free plugin. I can highly recommend if you ever get on a job like this, use that plugin, it's great. Also Cinema would allow us to use motion blur and depth of field. Then we would have these cards. So I did some tests in Cinema to kind of get this transfer mode look with overlay and multiply and whatever you want. And I just couldn't get the shaders to work like that. So so we had to figure out a way to do this basically externally in After Effects, and the combination of Cinema and After Effects works great. And also we had to figure out a way to change these colors eventually for different companies that Verizon would work with. So they wanted us to incorporate their basically their brand colors, and if they work with a company like Time Warner Cable, which is completely blue, we would have to change all these shaders or these planes basically to a blue color. So we decided, okay, we're just going to do this whole thing in After Effects, because then we don't have to go back into 3D to change it, and we're just going to keep it there. The third thing, the characters. As I said, we shot them in live action. The tricky thing here was that there was no time to model and animate them in Cinema or even in Maya. We just didn't have the resources for that. So we decided, okay, we're just going to shoot them, roto them, and put them on a 2D layer in the 3D file. The only problem with that was that we could not change the camera. Like the camera couldn't spin around them, because then the 2D layers would break. So every time there was characters in the scene, the camera had to face them flat. And then the last thing were the supers, which were the most annoying part, because they kept changing over and over and over again. Like they didn't like this layout for 4 or 5 style frames, just for this first frame, basically. Yeah, so the first step for me was to start in Cinema 4D, did an animatic. This is the very first one on January 25th. And the good thing about an animatic is that it gives you a sense of timing. You just record a scratch video. Actually, my boss Orion read the scratch video from one of the old scripts, and you can basically time out and scale the entire scene. So that looked like this.
Here's big news from Verizon Wireless and Xfinity from Comcast.
Really ghetto.
Now get triple play and wireless together. Call 1-855-704-7400 to sign up.
An old style
And
frame,
get a free
basically, with a
smartphone.
bigger city that they didn't like.
Verizon Wireless and Xfinity.
And there was
from
supposed to be a guy
Comcast.
coming in, picking up the
The
phone,
best in entertainment.
and then we zoom out
at home
on a
and
cityscape.
away.
But it was too much big city for them. They wanted to do this for a more local customers. So they kept basically stopping us on putting any high rises in there. Yeah, so we started modeling. Some of the designers worked in Cinema already, which was great. So we just grabbed their models, put them in the animatic, started with laying out the entire scene in cubes and shapes, and then added the lines or the splines in Cinema. And then we added the cards in Cinema as well, just to basically position and align them perfectly to the models with a little espresso setup that we built and HUD, which made it easier to control them. And the espresso setup basically was really helpful, because this told the external compositing text. Sorry, this is very technical. So who works in Cinema again? Great. I'm just going to talk to you now. But that was pretty helpful because this way all the shapes that we built came directly like this into After Effects, and we could just open a scene and we would have everything there, and all we needed to do is shade it and add gradients. So 4 days later,
Portland.
we got
Here's
to
good
this,
news from
which was
Verizon
already
Wireless.
pretty far along. You see the cards in
And
here, you
Xfinity
see the
from
splines, we've
Comcast.
got a new car
Now
in
get
there,
triple play
still
and
placeholder
wireless
people,
together.
but we already have
Call
some type in there, a new scene
1-855-704-7404
here, didn't like that car back
to
there.
sign up. And choose
Then a new
free
transition to the
smartphone.
cityscape, the towers were too
Verizon
high for
Wireless
them.
and Xfinity from Comcast.
I can't believe I can
The best
remember
in
all that.
entertainment, at home and
Yeah,
away.
and then the fade out into infinity. I don't know what the plan was for that. So parallel to that, we switched to After Effects, to work in After Effects. So this had to run parallel, so we basically asked the freelancers that worked on it, or whoever owned a shot, had to work on the After Effects shot as well, because people were familiar with what they were working on, so they just built that over there as well. So this would be basically all the shapes for the first shot, and then we would add mask and animate masks and gradients and whatever to build something like this. This is a different perspective of the original camera, and then we just overlay it or put the 3D renders on top of that, and then place the people down there somewhere. So while this was going along, we started doing the shoot. And as I said, we didn't have any big budget for the 3D people, so we just shot in our studio in front of the green screen. There's actually me in the second shot. I'm standing there calling on the phone. This is Gareth, who's an actual marathon runner and a great art director and a great friend of mine. So we had him run in front of the office. This is my boss and his wife walking down a street in Soho. And this is Billy, who had to act as the kid. He's just the tallest, the smallest guy we have in the office. So we just scaled him down a little bit. And he's also a great soccer player. This material then was sent out to Rodo and got treated by another freelancer who basically added shading to all the characters in an After Effects project. So she would get all the shapes of the body separately from the Roto company and just add this little nice definition or depth to it. So we got pretty far along. By the third posting, the agency provided us with some material that we had to put in the screens. They weren't sure what actually to put in there, so they just sent us some trailers that they downloaded from the Apple website.
Portland. Here's big
and
news
here we
from
go.
Verizon Wireless. And Xfinity from Comcast.
So you see there's more
Now
shading,
get the Xfinity triple
some
play.
twilight.
And Verizon Wireless.
However,
together.
this stuff is
Call
pretty off. There's some
855-704-7400
frame rate
to
issues. It's
sign
the
up.
2D characters
And
there.
get a free smartphone. Choose any one of our coolest phones.
They actually changed from
Verizon
our
Wireless
coolest phones
and
to our
Xfinity
hottest
from
phones later
Comcast.
on,
The best at home and away.
which luckily didn't have any effect on the animation. So we got a bit further there, and I think it was about that time that we hired another freelancer to just take care of the edit of the whole thing. So we basically needed a really good After Effects guy who can control this entire project, keep track of all the legals, all the supers, all the changes, whatever needs to be done in one big file that then eventually could be passed on to many different freelancers or people in-house that will have to do all these, apply all these changes. So the first amazing thing he did, his name is Fred Kim, he's a great guy. He built a camera system. This might not be showing it really good. Well, anyway, so the camera kept changing because the client had timing changes and they changed the script constantly. So we always had one master camera that we worked off that we kept exporting, and Fred basically built a setup in his edit file that would have a master camera that is linked with expressions to slave cameras, which is an awful term. I apologize for this term, but that's just how he called it, throughout the shots. So all he would have to do is update one camera when there were any updates, and then the rest would be taken care of by itself. And also the bright pink thing you see there, that's a, no, that might actually be the camera, the red thing. The red thing is a null that we exported from Cinema, which gave us the depth of field that we then translated into After Effects, so that the depth of field and the motion blur would match perfectly with the After Effects cards and the renders from Cinema. And all this happened in 2 weeks, so I'm still amazed that we pulled this off. And also this was basically his final edit, and as you can see, it's pretty much just 5 pre-coms. In the bottom you have the background layer, which was the entire beauty pass, and then on top of that, it's just all the different texts that needed to be inserted. And it was a pleasure, well, for what you can call it, but it was actually enjoyable to go back into this file because it was nicely clean and easily understandable. Well, apart from maybe the background edit, this was the background edit, which was kind of a chaotic thing. Yeah, but this is the legals, so we could easily go in there, just change the text layers, and kick out new renders, whatever the agency wanted. Then we would switch the end tag, the phone numbers, the URL, the price offers they would put in there, whatever you want. So another 2 days later, they changed the selects of the characters, which was not fun. Pretty much they decided that Billy was too good playing soccer, and he had to calm it down a little bit, so we had to change that, send it back to the rotor company, go through this whole process again. But they eventually picked the select, which is great. And this was also 2 days before the Super Bowl weekend, which is a sacred thing in the States. Whoever here is from the States, you know that it's all about eating dips and great food. So having to tell a couple of Americans that they have to work on the Super Bowl weekend was not easy. Anyway, so
Portland.
this
Here's
is
big
the
news from Verizon Wireless. And
this is
Xfinity
basically
from
2 days
Comcast.
later after the first.
Now get the Xfinity
The other
triple
previous,
play.
we by now fixed the
Verizon
whole frame rate
Wireless
issue, added a
together.
lamp back there.
Call 855-704-7400
Still don't have rotor for
to
these
sign
people.
up. And get a free smartphone. Choose any one of our hottest phones.
It's hot now.
Verizon Wireless and Xfinity from Comcast, teaming up to give you TV, home phone, internet, and wireless service together.
Yeah, and they also didn't like that building right there. They thought it was too much. So, you know, and all these things, you hear them the day of. I'm sure you're familiar with these lines. It's just when you have 2 weeks to pull this thing off, it's just every comment drives you up the wall. So we got to Super Bowl weekend, and our producer, Kitty, I have to shout out to her here, did an amazing job making all these dips and ordering tons of food to actually make this day enjoyable. We had some midnight revisions, dailies basically, going through all the last details. I was smoking like a maniac in that time. And one of my friends and coworkers, Phipps, took this picture. So this was at 5:41 in the morning on Monday, February 6th, after we worked through an entire weekend. Or actually, it was the second weekend that we worked through. And as you can see here, this was basically 2 days before final picture lock, and we still had a lot to figure out. We made it all the way to here.
Here's big news from Verizon Wireless.
So the characters are
Xfinity
still
from
differently
Comcast.
shaded. Didn't like
Now
this
get the
color.
Xfinity triple play.
Lines are too
And
thick.
Verizon Wireless.
And there's
together.
some
Call
glitches you will notice.
855-704-7400 to sign up.
I'm sure you're kind of bored. Like you see how this flickers. There were some issues with the render farm, and usually all these issues are not a big deal. But when all this happens at the same time, and it's like 5 in the morning, and you have to figure out what the hell this is, it was kind of tiring. Well, in the end, we worked off a Google Doc, which I can highly recommend. If you ever face a job like this, just make a Google Doc, spit down every task for every job, because everybody can edit that and basically mark off whatever is approved or needs to be done or needs to be distributed to someone else. And that was really helpful for the entire project. So, 2 days later, we finally made it to the picture lock. We added slates to the spot. And here's it one more time. I'm sure you guys are really sick of it. This time,
news from Verizon Wireless and
UVO.
Xfinity from Comcast. Now
Different
get the
shading
Xfinity
there.
triple play
Lines are worked
and
out.
Verizon
See all this? See all this text stuff that's happening there?
855-704-7400 to sign up and get a free smartphone. Choose one of
These
our hottest
things,
phones.
and then
Verizon Wireless and Xfinity. TV, home phone, internet, and wireless together.
anyway, the client signed off on of this, and that was That was really enjoyable, and then they provided us with this list of deliverables, which is tons of different things. I hope this is not, I don't know, I've never worked in Europe in a professional studio. Do you guys do conforms? Like, do you have to change different frame rates to something? Yeah? Okay. Well, because in the States it's like the 2997 and then the 23976 and then the HD and the SD, and that usually added 1 or 2 days for like 3 spots like this. It always added 1 or 2 days to the whole thing to just render out all these versions. And then usually once we deliver all that, the client would realize that something in the legal is wrong, that there's a typo or whatever they realize, which is actually funny because in the States at the agencies, all these cell phone companies are such bad competitors that they have people working just on watching other companies' spots to read through their legal. So they basically go through it frame by frame to check if there's any misspelling or if there's any wrong information or whatever. And as soon as they find something, as soon as they find something that doesn't line up, they would sue the shit out of the other company. And this is not a joke. When I heard this, I was like, oh, that's why they kept changing it all the time. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But we made our lives easier here. We basically the picture was logged, so we rendered a proxy for the background render, and then just went and changed the legal, which provided us with really fast renders, which was a great time saver. Yeah, and we actually ended up managing to deliver all 3 spots for 3 different cities at the same time. Went to the tape layoff at a production company or at a post-production company, had a rep party. We're sitting in a bar, had a great time. You know, we're talking about, oh man, I didn't sleep so little, or you know, telling all these great stories, and then how she made this dip, and how he freaked out because something went wrong. And we got a phone call from the agency that the SD tapes were incorrect because in all our sleeplessness, we put in the incorrect field order. So all the SD tapes were broken, and we were already, you know, wasted. So we had to all run back to the office, try to figure this out. And the post-production house was closed. I think they had a night shift, so we re-exported everything, went over there, got the tapes out again, and then finally it was over. And I almost died of a heart attack. And this is just a list of projects we did for the different conforms that we had to do, because I couldn't fit all the different edits that we did in one picture. So you see whatever the first one is, it's like 3 cities, and then there's 2 cities, and then there's Cox, and then there's Oceanic, and then there's Bright House and Time Warner Cable, and so on and so on. And that basically resulted in spots that look like this, or 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 like that. They wanted to have an actual credit card in there, so we had to put a credit card in there, different credit card with different logos, different amount of money. And the guy I was working with on this project most of the time, Christopher Phillips, he checked his hours. So we have to, at the office, we have to log our hours for every day. And he checked his hours, and for 2012, he worked 700 hours just on this project, which is an absolute nightmare. And he was that close from quitting. The step I actually took in the end, but it was not because of this project. It was more because my visa ran out and I wanted to move back to Germany. Yeah, so this is one last picture from New York, which I will miss a lot, but I'm hoping that we're gonna have a great time here in Berlin, Helen and me. And thanks so much for your attention. If you guys were looking for an apartment, I just want to take this opportunity to give a shout out. If you guys know anyone who moves out, who wants to give up his apartment in Kreuzberg, let us know, please. Anyway, but thank you very much, and thanks for coming out.